Hello, my name's Brendan Hardy and this video is for all you rev heads out there. I'm going to showcase all the cars I've done up and probably a few videos of things that you might find interesting. I've owned cars my whole life, all the way from the 1970s to where we are now in 2024. So I'm hoping you're going to enjoy the trip down memory lane as I show you the cars that I did up and a little bit of history on them. There's some really pearlers in here, so enjoy. There may also be some in here that you may not be expecting to see, but it takes all sorts to make the world go round, and all cars do up very nicely. Another byproduct of the trip down memory lane is you'll get to see a skinnier version of myself in my early 20s, all the way through to where I'm at now in my 50s. Alright, which is not such a skinny version of myself, but as they say, old bastards never die, they just go faster. So, broom broom. But before we get into that, I thought I'd show you a compilation of near misses. Nobody was harmed in any of these videos, so sit back, grab a cold one from the fridge and enjoy. Yes, some very lucky people in those videos. And with luck like that, I reckon they should go and buy themselves a lottery ticket, because I reckon they'll win. Anyway, back to the cars. The first car I ever owned, I got when I was only 16. That's right, 16. My mum bought it for me, and I was going to get my licence in it, which I did, and it was going to be the car I learnt to drive in. It was the Toyota Crown, of course, 1970. This isn't the exact car, of course. Unfortunately, my photos of that car have long since been perished. But I borrowed this pictures off the internet so as you guys could get an idea of what it looked like. I actually owned a blue one, same as this one here. What blew me away at the time about the Toyota Crown 1970 model was the massive tail lights. It lit up like a Christmas tree and lit up my dreams as well. It also had a massive boot, big enough to hide a body in. And of course the Toyota emblem with Crown meant that it was top of the range for that line at the time. So it had the leather seats and all the mod cons that came, all the bells and whistles of the time that the cheaper cars didn't quite get, and that's why the Crown emblem was on the car. This is a very good example of the plush leather seats and the overall feeling of being the most important person in the world. The car really did give you a level of luxury that you felt should have been reserved for kings. So you felt pretty special when you were driving one. The only thing I ever did to the Toyota Crown was to put in a nice new stereo and equaliser system with a 4-way speaker system, state of the art at the time, and I was pretty chuffed with it. Loved it, loved that car, thought it was a great car and had many a good time in it, just the way it was. Then of course you had the motor, the power plant. It's only a standard 6-cylinder Toyota motor, but it was reliable and went well. This car you're seeing here is the same colour as my Toyota was, identically. So that gives you an idea of the colour scheme that I had on my car. While we're on the subject of Toyotas that I owned, the next one was a Toyota Corolla. I'll go through all my Toyotas while I'm here, and then I'll go through each of the cars as I go along. But the Toyota Corolla, it was a fairly nice car, but was something I got because I was in the family way at the time with my wife, which I'll explain later on in the video. This photo of me, I was about 20 years old when this photo was taken, and that's me looking out of the window of my Toyota Corolla. The only thing I did to do it up was to put the Toyota emblem across the top of the windshield, which was a common thing we used to do back in the day. All the young people did it. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching right now out there who's my age remember doing it. After the Corolla, I grew up a little bit, went through a few more cars. Then I got into four-wheel drives and started with a Toyota Land Cruiser, which I loved, and got absolutely stuck into that. So let's have a quick look at that right now. As you can see here, the Land Cruiser with my children sitting on it. Here I am when I'm a bit more, not quite experienced enough to be doing what I'm doing, but this was before I realised that when you're about to go through a big, deep, muddy hole, it's a good idea to walk it first. As I was going through, you can see here where I've hit a pothole and nearly rolled it as the back wheel is completely out of the water, but she stayed on all four, faithful girl that she was. As we continued on, it got a little deeper and a little deeper. And yes, it's lucky, but we got all the way through, but she did end up coming over the bonnet, the water. And by the time I got out the other end, I had a floor pan full of water and a belly full of fun. But yeah, we had a great time with the Land Cruiser. I'd recommend anyone to get one of these. They're heaps of fun. The next car I owned after the Toyota Crown was a Valiant Charger 1972. This is a photo of me standing in front of my Charger at 18 years old. It's the only surviving photo of my Charger, so I'm very proud of this photo. I do wish I could turn the clock back to 18 again and have my Charger back, but unfortunately we can't do that, not yet anyway. You might be able to just see on the inside of the doors the crushed velvet that I'd placed all over the doors and the roof. It looked a treat. It also had a bull's head gear knob on the gear stick, which fitted my hand just perfectly. It was a real trend at the time, and I just had to do it. It was awesome. I've borrowed some of these from the internet. They're the same colour, the metallic brown with gold flecks, and boy did it sparkle in the sun. My Charger had the straight 6 Hemi 265 with the triple Webers, and boy did she fly. She'd take on any V8 no problem at all. Little known fact, the Chargers actually were in Bathurst and stood up against the V8s, then later became V8s themselves, and they did do quite well at Bathurst. Another little known fact about the Charger is that the Australian Police Force actually had them in their ranks and used them as pursuit cars. Now normally I wouldn't like a policeman racing up behind me with his lights going, but if he come flying up behind me in a Charger, that might be a different story. I'd be inclined to probably stop and maybe even accept a ride. Yeah. Wouldn't mind taking a ride downtown in a Charger. That'd be the way to go downtown in style. And the Charger certainly had a style all of its own. The Hemi motor started its life actually as a truck motor and was very successful being put into trucks, but then was remodelled to suit the Valiants. A very tough motor, very good strong motor, so no wonder there's Mopar fans out there. If you're into Mopar power, you're going to enjoy this part of the video because I own quite a lot of Mopar Chrysler by Chryslers and Valiants. I really went through a phase doing up in between other cars that I own, but I'll go through all of them now while we're on this subject of Mopar power. After my Charger, I owned quite a few other cars, miscellaneous Fords and Holdens and things, not before I came back and the Mopar bug bit me. The first car I got that was Mopar after the Charger was this one, the Valiant Safari. Unfortunately, I don't have any surviving photos of Valiant Safari, so I borrowed this from the net to show you what it looks like and to give you an idea of the style. Mine was white, similar to this one here, and it had a foxtail floating off of the antenna. Now before you go getting your knickers in a knot and saying how could you kill an innocent fox, it was a fake one, so don't worry, I didn't go out and kill a fox and grab his tail. Like I said, synthetic, people, synthetic. This one is mine. This is my Valiant Regal. Now I went to town on this one and did it right up. Yeah. I'm about 25 in this video here. Ooh. I went to town on this one. I put the mags on it. I had the paint job, chrome motor. Really went to town. She was immaculate. Had everything going for her just the way I wanted it. CB radio, and of course the Valiant sign across the top of the windscreen, as we all love doing in the day. These are some photos of my chrome motor so that you can see just how I did it all up. Then came the Valiant Ranger. I was doing a lot of towing of caravans and things at the time, so this one I set up for towing. She had all the beautiful spotlights on her, which really drained the battery quickly, and you had to have a bigger alternator to cover it. She had the mag wheels. She had a special motor in this one, the Bathurst racing motor with the Bathurst transmission. So all full racing gear under that one with the road hugger wheels. Then came a few years later my Chrysler by Chrysler V8 318. It had gas conversion with the unleaded petrol and the hardened valves so as you wouldn't be doing any damage to the motor by putting unleaded in it. It went very, very quickly, especially when on petrol. And I had the brand new paint job on it. It was metallic brown with the mag wheels and all the bells and whistles. Again, CB radio, a must. I'm about 30 years old in this picture here and very, very proud of my Chrysler by Chrysler. You can see me there polishing it to immaculate shine. And that's all the Mopars I've owned over the years. After the Toyota Corolla, I got a sporty little Layla Marina. She was a 2-door, 4-cylinder auto, and she was very, very zippy. She had a red pinstripe down the side of her, and she was cream in colour with a red interior, very sporty. Once again, unfortunately, I have no surviving photos of the actual car, so I've had to once again borrow a couple of photos from the internet. This particular car here though is very, very close to it and looks almost identical to the one I had. Pretty soon though, we will be getting to where I do have a lot of photos. These are just because these are my earlier cars and photos haven't survived. The Marina was launched in 1972 in Australia and was originally sold as a Morris. Launched with 1500 and 1750cc motors, and by the end of the year there was 9,398 examples have been found in new homes. In 1973 the Morris Marina was rebadged to become the Layla Marina, as all cars by the firm were now sold this way in Australia. The front end was slightly redesigned at the same time, and the car was marketed strongly as a domestically produced car. Sales did top 10,000 for the year. Towards the end of 1973, Leyland Australia launched a 2.6 litre 6-cylinder version and called it the Morris Marina Red 6. In 1974, production of the Leyland Marina ceased at the Zolta factory due to the company's financial problems. These would end up proving insurmountable, and as a consequence the Layla Marina, along with the Leyland P76, more famous version, dropped off the Australia price list in the early months of 1975 as dealer stocks dried up. Then my love affair with Ford started, starting with the Ford Escort, sticking to the 4 cylinders because everyone was telling me that a young family should have a 4-cylinder to save fuel. Back then, fuel was a lot cheaper than it is now. Don't ever listen to anyone when they tell you need to do this or that or the other thing and your car doesn't suit. If you love your car, you do it with that car, because it's been my experience that it doesn't matter the car, you can make it work, and people's opinions, they need to keep them to themselves. Anyway, went from the Ford Escort and went through that one pretty quickly. Didn't like it much. This isn't mine, this is off the internet again. And this next one is mine, the Ford XC Falcon. I love this car. I went to town on my Ford XC. I put the 351 shaker bonnet scoop on, cut the hole myself and fitted it all myself. And then it had the rhubarb, mag wheels, and even the U-Butte Ford sun visor of the day that we all like to do back in the day, put across the top there. Then I went under the engine bay and I had fun chroming everything under there and painting and chroming, and I put the big U-Butte airflow on it, the nice easy to clean air cleaner that used to sit under a wire mesh, and we called them the airflows. They were sporty looking air cleaners and very easy to use. Loved this car very much. You can see off to the side there the train horns that I put on it, so as when I let somebody know I was honking them, they knew that I was honking them. Those horns were very, very loud and did me proud. The engine was a 250 crossflow engine, 6-cylinder, big 6, and she was very economical. That car used to run on the smell of an oily rag, and I had a lot of fun in it. Then I went totally mad and bought a 1954 Ford Baker's van. Was going to put a V8 motor in it, put the big mag wheels on it, do it all up. The Baker's van that I bought looks similar to this one. This isn't it, but looks very similar to it. I was going to put a 9-inch diff in it, just go to town on it. But then common sense came back to me, and I thought, why do I want to do all that when it's original and working and running? It still had the original motor in it. Did all of 70 kilometres an hour top speed to preserve it to proper restore sort of institution that was going to restore it to its former glory. Didn't need much doing as it was running, and there wasn't really much wrong with it. The panels, there wasn't any rust. It was in good condition. When I came back to sanity and sold that car, I was then being pulled towards the Ford Fairlane V8. V8 was calling, and it was time for me to answer. I'd been with the 6 cylinders, I'd been with the 4 cylinders, but now it was time to experience V8 power. The Ford Fairlane I owned is very similar to this one, was white in colour, had a very strong V8 powered motor in it, and I had a lot of fun and time in that one. It was a fantastic car, and if you ever have a chance to buy one of these vehicles, they run very smoothly and it's just a sheer pleasure to drive. I'd encourage you to get one if you ever get a chance to. In this day and age though, you'll be paying the big bucks, I'm afraid. I then went to an XR Falcon, which was a very, very good vehicle as well. All these are in the 1970s and early cars that I owned. Back in the day, I only paid like $2,000 to buy these vehicles. In this day and age, you're looking at well up around the 50 to 100,000. This one is a panel van version of the XR Falcon, but it's the same colour as the one I had, so I've put it in here so as you can see the colour scheme as it was on my car. The Ford Falcon came out with both the V8 and the blue motor, the 200 series 6-cylinder. Then I delved back into the 1960s and came up with an XP Falcon. She had no seat belts because she was pre-seat belts, the bench seats. Mine was in a cream colour station wagon with a red interior, very similar to what's being seen here. My station wagon had the old-fashioned louvers in the back windows, as you can see in this representation of the vehicle here. And it was a wind-up window, as you can see by the old-fashioned handle on the back of the tailgate. Very intriguing to see how the old people used to do it, but back in the day, I didn't care. I just loved the vehicle. Also had the 200 blue motor in her, and she went very well as well. I ended up putting a twin system on it, what we used to call a twin exhaust. And yeah, done her up a little bit and had a bit of fun with that one as well. I also owned a Ford Cortina. This is me sitting in my Ford Cortina at age about 19-20. I really enjoyed my Ford Cortina and we had a ball driving it around. It had a brilliant paint job and had all the bells and whistles on it. As you can see in the photo, my Ford Cortina was blue. I've added a couple other photos from the internet here so as you can see the actual car, what it looked like, because the photo doesn't show the car itself, only the colour. The last Ford I ever owned was a four-wheel drive, the Ford Bronco. I bought the Ford Bronco over in the USA, just for a car to drive around in. She was a bit rough and ready, but she was a beast. She'd take on the roads, the snow, the wilderness, no problems at all. Had a great time in the USA in this vehicle. I did mention earlier in this video that I had a Land Cruiser. I also had 2 Nissan Patrols, one petrol and one diesel. Fortunately, I don't have any photos left of the diesel, which was a nice light blue in colour and had all the bells and whistles, but I do have one of the petrol, which is a grey. This is the photo of it, and it went quite well, although it was very bad on fuel economy. Went 200 kilometres to the tank on petrol, 400 on diesel, not much better. I put it down to the shape of the vehicles. Don't know about the Land Cruiser. It used to do a bit better, but not much. The Land Cruiser was a 6-cylinder diesel. I think I got about 600 kilometres to the tank out of that one. After I finished with the Fords, I went to Holden. Holden was a whole new love affair, which I did have a good time with. I've both enjoyed Fords and Holdens. I know there's two different camps, those that love Fords and those that love Hold'ems, but I love them all. This photo was taken in Darwin of my Holden HT. I went all over town in this car. It had the mags, had everything I needed. It was a station wagon, and she was a very, very good vehicle. A red motor, 202 motor in it. I was working security at the time. I'm about 25 years old in this photo, posing in front of my beloved HT Holden. And just getting back to the motor for a second, we all knew that to make a red 202 motor go harder, that you'd take a red 186 motor's head and put it on the 202 and it would make it go very hard. So that's what we used to do in the day, and it was just a cheap way of getting a lot more out of the engine. A little later on in life, I owned a Holden VY Commodore. It was my first Commodore. I came into the Commodore era with this vehicle and thought it was quite a very good car. It was a V6, had the V6 motor in it and went very, very strong, and was a great family car. There's some Commodore lions on the back doors if you look very hard. They're hard to see because they're silver and they blend in with the white. But I did enjoy putting the lions on there, and it did give it a little bit of an attitude. Then I decided to get stuck into doing some more cars up, go back to my roots, and I went with the HQ Holden Ute. Bought this Ute very cheaply, about $1,000, and ended up doing it up. I owned a second Ute as well, which I also did up, which was a V8. First one was a 6-cylinder 186 motor. The second one was a V8. 6-cylinder red motor I took out of the first HQ and ended up putting a V6 motor out of a Holden Commodore. A kit from Sydney, which I was able, an adapter kit, which I was able to get it to put in. Made it go very well, very light chassis with a V6 motor. She went very hard. This is me standing in front of my newly converted V6 HQ Ute. I'm about 40 years old in this photo. After playing with the HQ Holdens, I decided to come into the 21st century a little bit further and bought myself a brand spanking new Holden Commodore Ute. This one I actually nicknamed the Phantom because of its colour was black. So I put a skull and crossbones on the side, as Pirates of the Caribbean were around at the time, and gave me the inspiration to put the skull and crossbones on the side of it and call the car the Phantom. I got a lot of looks, actually got pulled over by the police once just so they could check the car out. They didn't want to do anything other than just to have a look at her. But yeah, she got a lot of turning of heads, that was for sure. The next Commodore I owned after that was my HDT. And if the first one got a lot of turning her heads, the HDT got a whole lot more. She was fully, had all the kit on her, had all the Bathurst running gear in her, and she was really a treat. Had a red pinstripe down the side with white finish, white pearl finish. She was a beautiful car and went very, very fast. Matter of fact, I went through a lot of rear tyres just from normal driving away from lights because of the sheer torque that was put down to the road. Used to wear the tyres out very quickly. Then the four-wheel drive bug hit me again, and it was time for my Holden Colorado, which you can see here. I'm trading in the HDT, or selling my HDT and buying the Holden Colorado. It's goodbye to one and hello to the other, which was sort of bittersweet. There's only one other car that I owned that I haven't told you guys about, which I'll throw in just quickly here, was my Datsun. I had a short love affair with Datsuns. It was a 180B, and I drove that thing all over Australia, from Darwin through to Kalgoorlie, all the way through to Perth, Western Australia and back again, and she didn't miss a beat. I hand painted it myself. It was painted yellow with black stripes on the bonnet, and massive CB radio in it, of course. Alright, on to the next one. After the Colorado came the Isuzu D-Max, probably one of the best four-wheel drives I've ever owned. It surprised the hell out of me and has outperformed the other four-wheel drives that I've ever owned, and that's not kidding, that's being serious, it really has. when I would have been sitting there with my Colorado digging it out, the Isuzu, put it into low gear, away she goes. I've got a set of X-Tracks for it, the old get you out of the mud real quick type stuff, but I've never had to use them because every time I get into trouble I go to low four-wheel drive and she walks out like it's not even there. And that's the current car that I'm owning now. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know that anyone who's a true rev head would have enjoyed the trip down memory lane and looking at the cars, and I hope to see you on the next video. Until then, stay safe people, enjoy, catch you later.